we were now in a full-blown reverse pursuit scene. When we were young kids, the only interesting thing about our family drives to church on Sunday is that my dad had a tendency to throw his car in reverse and accelerate backwards at a very quick pace down our fairly long driveway. We grew up on some acreage, we had a farm, so our driveway was very narrow, fairly long, and it pretty much scared the living daylights out of the kids and our mother, which, as scared as we were just as happy with the fact that it made her scared. Those incidents kind of sparked in me a love for scaring people with the way I drive, particularly in reverse. So over the years, I began to follow suit. I started first with our driveway, and then later on, when I lived in an apartment complex in Dallas, taking the whole entire exit of the complex backwards, which involved a pretty nasty U-turn and probably a few really mad neighbors a couple times, but all in the name of good fun. A couple years later, I found myself in Dallas, and as a young man, I was out at a fairly late time of night on a fairly regular basis. And when you're out late at night, as my father would say, nothing good happens after midnight. And I, on a fairly regular basis, found myself tailing drunk drivers. I have kind of a protocol or a code maybe as to what, in my mind, distinguishes a drunk driver from somebody that is just distracted / texting. Because as bad as texting and driving is, I don't wish the ill will of getting pulled over and XYZ to anybody. So my rules are, if you swerve across the line 3 different times inside of a span of 2 or 3 minutes, or if you hit a curb and just keep driving, that's when I will call the police. And it usually has to be in the middle of the night, because when else am I going to be out there? So, point being, over the course of about a year and a half, I helped Dallas PD, Richardson PD, Plano, all the suburban areas of Dallas. Those departments, I helped them pull over in the vicinity of 7 or 8 drunk drivers. And the most interesting thing that came of all of that happened one night when I was in Richardson. I was headed down Renner Road, which is kind of our main suburban speedway. The speed limit's 45, and people pretty much clip along at 70. And this gentleman was all over the road. I called them up, got dispatch. Hello, this is Richardson PD. Hey, I'm following this guy. It was a gold Toyota Camry or something like that. And he appears to be drunk. Okay, sir, do you mind following him? No, ma'am, not at all. I've done this a few times with y'all guys. Okay, awesome. So I proceed to follow him, and we end up going across not 1, but 2 different city lines. And still, there were no cops in sight. Nobody. I end up following him into a neighborhood, which very, very stupid on my part, but at 19 or so years old, it was just what I was doing that night, and it was something of an adventure. So I pulled up behind him, probably 3 car lengths, just enough that I had some space, and I waited, expecting this guy to get out or curse me out or something. I was in a dark blue Dodge Charger, so it already pretty much looked like a police car, and he sat there for probably 3 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm continuing to sit on dispatch waiting for them to arrive. So I sat there and I waited. And instead of exiting the vehicle, I saw the reverse lights come on. An initial thought of what came across my mind, followed by, oh my, he's in reverse. I slammed my car in reverse as fast as I could, and he was already coming at me. It felt like at full speed. He might as well have been doing 60 miles an hour. In reality, 15, 20 maybe, but like it or not, in my mind, we were now in a full-blown reverse pursuit scene. The fastest I've probably ever gone in a car in reverse was like 25. But the funny thing about it is this was my first car with a reverse camera. And I thought all of a sudden that, I was God. Because now, instead of having to use my poorly adjusted mirrors, because, back then I didn't even know how to correctly adjust mirrors, now I had a camera. And man, this feels high tech as can be. Never mind the fact that Dodge's cameras are only, or at the time in 2014, were only about the size of a first-gen iPhone screen. Barely enough to see, but it felt like superpowers, and I certainly used it to its full ability, if you want to call it that. We got within a car length of each other, which in reality is some space, but when you are 19 years old and you've only gotten your driver's license a year and a half prior to that, just about feels like you are going to meet your fate. Finally, when we exited the subdivision, and thankfully it was 1 or so in the morning, I actually did full lock the car and bring it right back out at speed. And although I'm sure it looked absolutely awful, it felt like I was James Bond. And that really was the visual that was in the back of my mind. And this continued into my baby driver years. Somehow I survived, but as I exited that subdivision, I did tell dispatch, "This is the line. I'm going home now. You have all your information." She, "Yes, sir, I understand." And obviously, I would never recommend that any of you attempt to follow a drunk driver. But at the time, felt like the coolest adventure I could be on at the moment, and pretty much having dispatch egging me on certainly didn't help. Would I do it again? Yeah, probably.
Most of us carry around wallets that look a lot more like suitcases than like a toolkit for what we actually need for our day. The Ridge makes a line of wallets and bags that help you to carry exactly what you need and nothing you don't. So leave the junk at home and go to ridge.com/VINwiki and use the code VINwiki at checkout for a discount. Let them know how much you appreciate their support of the VINwiki channel.